Hey there again, kiddos. This is Miss Robin. Yesterday we talked about summarizing a story. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is take out your reading notebook out of your desk, go to the first clean page, and write this at the top of the page. I can summarize the key details of a story. You can pause this video while you do that. Next, you need to trace or draw a hand like you did yesterday with the somebody wanted but so then. Of course, somebody on the first finger to the left, excuse me, and then on the second finger over, wanted, third finger, but, so, and then. That would stand for the somebody who's the main character of the story, what that character wanted, but what was the problem, so what changed, the climax, then how did it end, how was it resolved? So go ahead and finish that up. You can again pause the video if needed, and we're going to read a story together. Okay, so by the end of this story, what you should have is you should have everything filled out on your somebody wanted but so then. The genre of this story is realistic fiction, which we've talked about quite a bit. Realistic fiction is, of course, a story that could happen in our lives, but the characters and the events are still made up. So this story is called A Reluctant Traveler. Now I'm going to let the story actually read itself to you because it'll highlight the words as we go along. So I thought that would be beneficial.
Genre: realistic fiction. A reluctant traveler.
Alrighty, so just to talk a little bit more about realistic fiction. Realistic fiction tells about characters, settings, and events that are like people, places, and events in real life. Details in realistic fiction reflect life as it is in today's times. Realistic fiction contains descriptive details that help the reader experience the story through your senses, like your sight, what sights the character is seeing, or what the character is hearing or experiencing. Realistic fiction also includes dialogue that sounds the way that we speak, that you and I would speak, or you would speak to one of your friends. So those are all characteristics of realistic fiction. Remember, our essential question this week is, what can learning about different cultures teach us? Now, on to the story, A Reluctant Traveler.
"I think packing winter clothes in August is weird," Paul said, looking from his bedroom window onto West 90th Street. This wasn't going to be a fun vacation. He was sure of it. His mom contradicted. "It's not weird, honey. Argentina's in the southern hemisphere, and we're in the northern hemisphere, so the seasons are opposite." To Paul, this was just another reason to want to stay in New York City. Paul wanted to spend the rest of his summer break hanging out with his friends, and not with Aunt Lila and Uncle Art in a faraway country. Paul's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Gorski, were teachers, and this was a chance they couldn't pass up. Their apartment had been covered with travel guides full of cultural information ever since Mrs. Gorski's sister and her husband had relocated to Argentina 6 months ago. The Gorskis had big plans. Paul, on the other hand, wanted to sleep late and play soccer with his friends. They lived in a city already. Why were they going to Buenos Aires? As their plane took off, Paul's dad said, "Look down there. That's the island of Manhattan, see? You can even see Central Park." Paul never realized how completely surrounded by water New York was. Many hours later, as the plane was landing in Buenos Aires, Paul noticed similar outlines of a city on the water and bright lights, just like home. New York City, Buenos Aires.
Okay, so what she was saying there at the end is right here on the map where it talks, this is where New York City would be. And then, this is New York City, of course, is in North America. We would be to the west of New York City, of course, southwest. And they took a plane to South America in Argentina, where the city Buenos Aires is located. Now, by now, you should already have the somebody and what he wanted, but what was the problem? Okay, so let's start right here with we.
"We have so much to show you," Aunt Lila gushed when they met at the airport. They had a late dinner at a restaurant, just as they often did back home, but the smells coming from its kitchen were new. Uncle Art ordered in Spanish for everyone: empanadas, small meat pies, followed by parrillada, grilled meat, chimichurri, spicy sauce, and ensalada mixta, lettuce, tomatoes, and onions. Paul made a face. "Don't be critical, Paul," his mom said. "Just take a taste." Though some of the foods were new, the spices and flavors were familiar to Paul. "Mom, I had something like this at Cesar's house," Paul said, after biting into an empanada. "This is really good." As he was complimenting the food, Paul felt his bleak mood improving. Their first full day in Buenos Aires brought a rush of new sights, sounds, and languages. Paul noticed that, like New York, Buenos Aires had people from all over the world. His Aunt Lila remarked, "We speak Spanish, but I really need to be multilingual." On a plaza, Paul saw a group of people dancing to music he'd never heard. Paul had seen break dancing on the street, but never dancing like this. "That's the tango," Uncle Art said. "It's the dance Argentina is famous for." "Being a soccer player, Paul, I know you have an appreciation for people who move well."
Okay, and so here would be an example of housing in Argentina, the dance, the tango that they were just speaking of, and here's the food they were speaking of. We're going to move on over to the last page of this story, and I do want you to think about, on this page, you should have been able to fill out the so. What changed? You know, Paul wanted to stay home for the summer, but his parents saw this as a good opportunity to learn about another culture. So he ended up, what? Enjoying it? Not enjoying it? So you should be able to fill out the so right now on your somebody wanted but so then hand. Moving over to the last page.
"You know, that is pretty cool," Paul admitted. Around noon, they piled back into the car and drove to the most unusual neighborhood Paul had seen yet. All the buildings were painted or decorated in yellow and blue. "Soccer season has started here," his Aunt Lila said. "Huh?" Paul asked, wondering if there had been a misunderstanding. "Isn't it too cold for soccer?" he asked. "It's nearly spring, and," his aunt added, "Boca and River are playing at La Bombonera, the famous stadium, this afternoon." She held out her hand, which held 5 tickets to see these big teams play. Paul couldn't believe it. "We're in the neighborhood of La Bombonera," Uncle Art said. "When Boca beats their rival River, the people decorate their neighborhood in Boca colors." "Maybe I could paint my room in soccer team colors," Paul blurted. His mom smiled. "I congratulate you, Paul. You've turned out to be a really great traveler." Paul smiled, too.
All right, so going back to your summarizing hand, we should be able to have filled out the somebody, wanted, but, so, then. Please pause the video now if you've not already been able to do that. Okay, moving on. Here's what I should have seen, or should see, on your hand. The somebody was Paul. He wanted to stay home for the summer, but his parents had an opportunity to learn about another culture, so he went and enjoyed learning about the other culture. Then he was glad he had taken the trip. So that's how the story ended. But that's not where we're going to end today, because yesterday you learned about summarizing, and we've summarized stories before. So we're going to go on to theme in this story. So on the next clean page, or if you still have room on the page you were writing on, you could just continue on that page. But I want you to write the I can statement. I can explain the theme of a story. Now, we've talked a lot about theme, and we talked a lot about theme in poems last week. And it's pretty much the same. You have to think about what was the character's challenge. So if you thought about what the character's challenge was, is he did not want to go. That was the exact challenge. He did not want to go, and we could be a little bit more specific if we said did not want to go on the trip to Buenos Aires, period. So there was his challenge. How did the character react or respond? Well, he went and had fun. Right now, if you've not already started writing, I want you to pause the video and write what I have just typed. Okay, so we know when we think about theme, it's what the character learns. We also know we have to have text evidence to back it up. We started by looking at what the character's challenge was, the fact that he didn't want to go on this trip. But how did he react or respond? And react or respond just means what the character did, in reaction. How did he or she act after a challenge has happened? That would be to react or respond. And we know that he reacted by going and having fun and learning about the culture. So the theme could be what? Well, what I'd like for you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video again and talk about in your groups. And when your group is ready, raise your hand and discuss as a class what the theme could be while you pause the video. Okay, so after your discussion, let's think about what the theme could be. Well, there are some options. There is an old saying, an adage, remember that would be a piece of advice, that is said like this: nothing ventured, nothing gained. That would most certainly fit as the theme here, because if he had not traveled to Buenos Aires, he would have not had fun and learned about the other culture. So nothing ventured means nothing chanced. And it's saying if you have put nothing to chance, then you're not going to gain anything in return. So that would be one possible theme for this story. Another theme could be you might learn or like something new if you try it. That would be another possible theme. Now, you might have said this exact thing, just using different words, and if what you said or what you've already written down for the theme of this story is basically what I have, then you're just fine. But if you maybe didn't quite get it, or if you didn't have anything written down yet, please pause and write this down now. And we have one more step before we're done. Okay, so actually I think I'm gonna move this down so that we can see both of them at one time. So I'm going to move that down to the next page. There's our theme. We need to have evidence to prove our theme. And the evidence in this case would have been that very last thing that was said in the story. So we're going to write, the evidence is his mom smiled. I congratulate you, Paul. You've turned out to be a great traveler. Paul smiled too. So that would be the evidence to prove our theme of either nothing ventured, nothing gained, or you might learn or like something new if you try it. There would be the text evidence. And of course, that's the last step to theme. And it is even on the anchor chart on the wall that you have to have evidence to prove your theme. If you've not already written this, please make sure that you write this. We're going to refer back to it next week. Now you're going to go on to self-pacing. So please get your self-pacing packet. You should already have everything that you need for the week. And make sure that you're on a level 1 if you're working with a partner, level 0 if you're working by yourself. I did not include anything with Study Island this week, so there's no reason anybody should need a Chromebook. But please be level 1 if you're working with somebody, level 0 if you're working by yourself, on task, and giving me quality work. Your work on these self-pacing packets has been awesome the last few weeks, so make sure that you keep that up. Otherwise, I will see you all later.